Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best champions in the game once mastered. So pretty much all of these champions, except for a few, have under a 50% win rate in solo queue, and that is because they are definitely harder to play, and for the average player on these champions, they're probably not going to perform very well, and most players in the game are average. They don't usually take the time to completely master a champion and know all their combos. They just pick up champions without really knowing exactly how to play them, which is why you see some of these champions have a lower win rate, just due to their higher skill cap. However, if you do take the time to learn these champions, then they can be really good for solo queue, because pretty much all of them either have great teamfight potential or they've got really good outplay potential. So without further ado, let's get into this video. First up, I have Ahri. Now, the reason why I have Ahri on this list is because she's really skill shot reliant with her charm and her Q. Those are her two main damaging spells, so if you can't land those on Ahri, then she's not going to be a very successful pick for you. However, if you can land those abilities, then you're going to be able to carry games extremely hard, especially in the once you get to the mid to late game as Ahri. If you can accurately land your charm on the enemy mid laner or the enemy AD carry, then that can practically just win you the game right there, especially if your team has some nice follow-up to your engage with your charm. She's also got great outplay potential in the laning phase with her ultimate. I really like Ahri into champions like Lux. Lux is a fairly meta pick right now, so if the enemy does lock Lux, I would recommend trying out Ahri against her, because Lux is a skill shot oriented mid laner, and with Ahri's ultimate, you can dodge pretty much all of Lux's abilities. So I really like just the outplay potential that you get with Ahri's ultimate, as well as the pick potential that you do get with her charm. So next up, I have Zed. Now, Zed has always been a champion that I've never really liked, and that's because I don't think I've seen a really good Zed player yet this season. It seems like I always get the average Zed players, or the Zed players who just don't know how to play him at all, and I think that once you can master Zed, he can be a very successful champion, because he's got so much outplay potential with all the dashes he's got. He's got the dash on his W, he can blink back with his ultimate, and he can just make so many sick plays in the laning phase and in team fight. So I think that Zed is a great champion, but just due to his higher skill cap, that is why he isn't he's not usually on my list for the best mid lane champions, because I think that an average Zed player, I don't see why you would play him unless you're a really good Zed player, because I think that if you're average on Zed, you might as well play someone like Talon or Yasuo if you're looking to fill the role of an AD assassin, because those champions are just much easier to play. So next up, I have Lee Sin. Now, Lee Sin is one of the strongest early game junglers in the game, which is why he's on my list. If you can land your Q when going for ganks in the early game as Lee Sin, you can just take over the early game and end up just ending the game before the 30-minute mark. But if you can't land your Q on Lee Sin, or you just have a bad game and you just find yourself not able to land skill shots, then he can fall behind really easily, and he's basically useless unless he can get some kills or get his team some kills in the early game. He does fall off quite a bit in the late game, so I think that for the average Lee Sin player, you're not going to do very well, because he's got so many different combos he can use. He can insect kick and knock the enemies back with his ultimate. He can go for flash kicks. He can do so many different tricks, and I think that unless you do know all of the tricks that you can do with Lee Sin, I think that they're just easier junglers to play. But like I said before, if you do master Lee Sin, he can be a very strong champion. So next up, I have Azir. Azir, he's kind of been falling out of meta recently. He's gotten a few nerfs, but I still think that if you can play this champion correctly, he can carry games extremely hard, especially if you know how to do his Shurima shuffle, and if you can jump in and use your ultimate to knock the enemies back into your team if you do get ahead. He's got a lot of outplay potential with those two different combos that he can use, and I think that he is harder to play because his soldiers are a very unique part of his kit, and no other champion in the game has that kind of interaction with an ability. So I think that Azir, just due to his soldiers being so unique and due to him having a lot of outplay potential, he's a very good champion when mastered. And last but not least, on my top 5, I have Gangplank. Now, I think that Gangplank he may not be the hardest out of all of these champions, but he is definitely one of the harder champions in the game, because his barrel mechanics are in my opinion, I think they are one of the hardest mechanics in the game. People can disagree with me on that one, but I think that Gangplank, if you can get his barrels down, they can just do so much damage in team fights. But in solo queue recently, I've ran into quite a few Gangplanks who can just literally never get a barrel off in a team fight, and it's kind of pathetic, honestly, because all they're basically doing is using their ultimate and then using their Q. So I think that unless you can get your barrels down and you know how to use that mechanic, I would recommend playing an easier champion. But Gangplank, if mastered, is definitely one of the strongest champions in the game. I have two honorable mentions, the first one being Yasuo. So I feel like whenever I get a Yasuo on my team, or actually whenever I'm playing Yasuo as well, whenever the Yasuo gets 1 or 2 kills, if they say the Yasuo gets first blood or he gets a few kills in the laning phase, I find that whenever I'm playing him, I always go too aggressive and I end up dying a few times. So I think that the difference between an average Yasuo player and a really good Yasuo player is being able to know how strong you are, because he is an all-in champion and he can make some pretty cool plays. But I feel like whenever someone's playing Yasuo, they try to make plays too much and they just try to go all in whenever they see an enemy caught out, and then they just end up dying a couple times. So in my opinion, Yasuo is harder to play because the average player can't really manage their aggression on Yasuo, whereas a really good Yasuo player will be able to know when he can go for that all-in and be able to know when he needs to jump in during a team fight. So Yasuo is a great pick. If you can get Yasuo with a knock up on your team as well, like a Wukong or a Malphite, he can be much more successful, and that definitely lowers his skill cap a little bit because you don't have to rely on hitting your own knock up in a team fight. But he's definitely a great champion if you can master him. And my second honorable mention is Rumble. So the reason why Rumble is on this list is because he's got really good teamfight potential with his ultimate. However, his ultimate is harder to land, and it's one of the harder skill shots in the game because it's very unique. Only Rumble and Victor have the kind of skill shot where you click and drag it, and therefore you can mess up while using it quite a bit. For the average Rumble player, he probably won't be able to get very many good ultimates off in team fights, and therefore he's not a very strong champion unless you can land his ultimate. However, if you can get good ultimates, like if you can find 3 or 4 man ultimates in team fights, then the amount of damage it does and the amount of CC it gives is really, really good. So I think that as long as you can get used to landing Rumble's ultimate, he can be a very, very strong pick for solo queue. So that is all for the video, guys. Let me know in the comments below of some champions that you think are the best in the game when mastered. Obviously, this list is just my opinion, and you guys are going to have your own opinion on this list as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below, guys. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.